Well, howdy. Happy New Year. Just doing another part of the world building here. Hope you're well. This is part two of the live stream that I just did, but again, I'm not really publicizing it. Uh, don't really want to run this one as a live stream. I actually just this makes it a lot easier to get a video onto YouTube, and it saves me having to upload and all that. And it takes a long time here with Australian internet. So what I'm working on here is you can tell things look a bit different now. If you've seen the first part of this, I'm ready to start painting this guy properly. Um, this grass here, yep, I'll be using this here. Now the shader that I'm using for the terrain is one called Micro Splat. If you are looking for a good solution for terrain shaders in Unity, I highly recommend Microsplat. They have a lot of different modules that you can purchase. Each can do something a little bit different. For example, if you need to leave tracks in the snow or sand, that's really cool as well. Oh, let's go ahead and hit some music. How about that? So something that Microsplat does very well is optimized rendering. It renders very quickly. For example, for every multiple of 4 different textures on the default Unity standard shader, it has to render, has to render the terrain geometry again, which can result, well, it does result in a substantial performance hit. So I always use Microsplat in my terrains here. Right? And just to give my eyeballs something that makes sense, let me have a look here. What is this? I'm just going to move my inspector window a little bit closer. I'm not craning my neck around here. Go ahead and just shrink that down. Let's just paint this and see. Okay. All right, that's not exactly the rock wall that I want. So let's see. I'm just figuring out what I've got here. Let's see. All right, I always use that texture for trees. So when I have trees, I paint that underneath, and I'll explain to you why. Okay, and I've got this sort of sand thing. So I have 4 textures here, but with Microsplat I could have more. It won't get a performance overhead. It just results in using more memory, which I have to be extremely careful with. On the WiiU, there's a very limited amount of memory that's available, and textures take up a huge amount. So, and I would rather have very nice looking textures rather than a bunch of awful looking ones. So I need to change my rock texture out. I'll do that later, but for now I'll just sort of paint in a little bit so things make sense to me. I've actually gone quite low resolution with my splat maps so that it doesn't use up too much memory with the splats here. And I just want to get a feel for how my environment's going to look. Just looking at where my... Oh no, I'm supposed to have paths here, right? Oh no, I'm a silly goose. That's not a... I was thinking of this spot right here. So I need to get my labels back. Is what I need. So these trees are left over from a test that I had previously. Right. So if you guys recall from the first video, this is one of the spots where I absolutely wanted to drop a boulder on it. I'm going to do that now. I've got some rocks that I had used previously for some tests. I'm just going to grab this fella. I'm not sure if he has... Does this guy have collider on him? Oh, he doesn't have a collider, so I'm going to have to sort that out. But just visually, let me go ahead and see what's going on here. Alright, so what I'm going to do is... drop a boulder on it. There we go. I will use a texture for my rock walls that fit better. So you can see it's problematic. If the player drops into there, they might get stuck. I'm going to have to be cautious with that. So, okay, and a bit like that. Go ahead and rotate it. Okay, and I think that looks, oh dear. Yeah, you know what? I think that looks okay. Okay. So in these situations, I like to paint my terrain when I have the actual stone texture on this sort of rock wall. Is what I think of it. Oh, make my brush just a bit smaller. I want precision painting here. Okay, and let's see. And that tends to look better, having the rock on the rock instead of the rock and then suddenly there's grass, which is not how it would look, you know, in a natural environment. Go ahead and just simulate. Oh, too dark. I can't see. But you can see once you've got, you know, the in-engine, the scene lighting, once you got your flashlight in there, it's going to look very cool. Right. So I've turned off the scene lighting just so it's clear and it's easy for me to look at. So there's a lot of these spots where I know that this didn't stretch real good. So I can manually just fix that, or I can put a boulder on. I'm going to do a bit of both, but I don't want to waste a lot of time doing this. So just to rough things out, what I'm going to do is get a larger brush size. Go. Oh, I'm going to switch to my trees. So I'll show you the trees that I've got here. Got cedar, this guy, and this guy. That gives everything a bit of variety in terms of visuals. So what I want right now is to pick the most, I suppose, open areas that aren't necessarily supposed to be walkable. My window disappeared. Please come back. Inspector. Just put it back on my other screen here. So I'm going to pick areas that are not necessarily supposed to be walkable, that I don't really prioritize the detail of, and I'm going to drop some of these trees in there, okay? All right, so let me see. That is too big. You can see I've set Holt here for scale. I'm gonna Control Z that, bring that down. Let me check my music volume. Is that too loud? Let me check OBS. Might be a little loud. I'm going to go ahead and roll down the music a little bit. Sorry if that was too loud for you. Okay, so I think that might be a little too small now. All right, I'm going to increase my tree density. Oh. Okay, let's see what we have here. Nope. This is what I don't like about the Unity tree brush. I just want to keep track of the slopes that these trees are on. Again, I can remove them manually. I'd like to use a procedural tool from World Creator that places trees based on the terrain slope, but World Creator doesn't run in this version of Unity. I'm going to delete these just so I can start fresh. I know exactly what's going on. Okay. Because trees don't really like to grow on extremely steep slopes. It also looks pretty sloppy if you've got a tree right there. It's just not right. It's visually an incoherent mess as well. So these are areas that are not super important. They're not meant to be super walkable, but you leave room in there because if you want to start carving a path where players can explore and find some optional content, items and whatnot, then sure, put that in there. Now, what I'm going to do with this area is I need to be a bit clever here because I know this is where the map ends. I need to make sure that the player can't see past that. because I wanted to maximize the amount of map that I can use. And so what I want to do here is, I better say something in the chat. Yeah, okay. My philosophy when creating scenes in games, and I put a lot of thought into the visual design of the environments and levels, is I consider the perspective from which the player will be viewing the environments. You're not just looking at the environments from one fixed view from a distance. The player is exploring the environment, but there will be situations where the player is led to view the environment from particular perspectives, and it's those perspectives I need to pay extra care to, and I see opportunities to present an interesting scene to the player. So I always keep in mind my levels and the composition of the lines in those levels. So say for example, this is quite dull here. The player's looking out, there's nothing there, it's just flat, right? And having the trees there breaks up that flat line. What I'm going to do is grab one of the rocks that I've used previously. I'm just going to duplicate this guy. Just grab this one for example. Let's see, is this a prefab? I just want to check the prefab state. This guy's not a prefab. Actually, what I will do now is grab, oh, hold on, let's undo that. This guy's not been prefabbed. I'm going to check how many triangles that is. Okay, 409. Okay, so that's okay. I want to make sure that this guy has a mesh collider. Right now the player can fall through that. So I'll put a mesh collider in there. And you can save processing an overhead by making that convex. Now that means that you can see the lines of where it collides. That stops the player from falling into problematic gaps. So I do want this. What I will do now is I want to make this guy a prefab so I can reuse him, and any changes that I make to this guy will be carried over to other objects. Okay. Now we have our rock, so I can reuse this guy. I'll explain to you a visual trick I've employed because the Wii U does not have a lot of memory for textures, but I want the rocks and everything to be highly detailed. What I've actually done is I'm using detail maps to add detail. So you have your normal and your detail, your normal albedo color. If I set this to 0, you can see that's what it looks like with the normal resolution maps. And that's what it looks like because the Wii U can't handle that many textures, can't handle large textures in a big environment where there's so much variety. What I've done is used this detail map, and I'm looping it 20 times around this object. If it's such a large object, actually, because it's a larger object, I might want to loop it 30 times, and you can see that it now looks sharp and detailed. The object is so big, it's in this perspective of a game, it's hard to tell where the textures are repeating because of the lighting, because you only see so much of the object at a time. But if you take a step back, you can see where it's repeating. But this game is a first-person view that's quite close, so it's going to be difficult to see that. Let's try 25. Oh, wow, what a big number. You can see that's at a lot of detail to it. So that's how I've gotten, pardon me, that's how I've gotten detailed objects without using so much memory. Now then, go ahead and duplicate this guy now that he is a prefab. I'm going to bring him back to the starting area here. What if I double tap F? Does this have that? Ah, fantastic. This is a feature I wish that was carried over into Unity 2019, but it's gone. This is Unity 2017. I've double tapped F. When I move this guy, the camera automatically moves to him until I sort of rotate the camera. Then the feature, actually, if I move the camera, if I shift it, it stops. So again, I'll bring this back because this is where the player is going to start, and I need to hide this area. I need to make sure there's room for the player to park their car there, but I need to hide the fact that this is the end of the map. So I'll go ahead and move this guy. Let's say, for example, like this. I hope the music isn't too loud. What does OBS say? Might be a little loud. It says OBS. Sorry about that. The Frontier Fighters music is a little bit louder than the other tracks. Okay, so I need to break that lineup, and I know that the camera won't be able to get higher up. Okay. What other rocks do I have available to me? How does this one look? Well, it's quite a small rock, isn't it? I can scale him up. I've got details on him as well. See, and I envision the cars rounding this. Oh, that's too tight. Well, we're going to have to live with it. We can smoothen that out manually, actually, using our manual tools. Alright, so what I'm trying to do is break up the linearity and the monotonous nature of straight lines. The idea is that if the player can see straight through to the end of the level, that's not an interesting level to look at. You need things that break that up. So whether the player has to turn left and right, that's what makes a level interesting, is if you can't see straight to the end goal and you're constantly having to adjust your perspective. And when you adjust your perspective, there's something interesting to look at. That's my intention with game design in terms of my levels. Let's go ahead and smoothen this guy out. Let's see. Smooth. Fix that. There we go. Now we can use our hand tools. Fantastic. We're done with the procedural stage, so now we work with our hands. Okay, now that's going to be quite tough for a vehicle to turn there. It's doable, but not great. So I'll smoothen that out. I'm going to make the brush size just a little bigger. And it looks a little bit rough for a vehicle to get through, so I'm going to lower that and make the opacity quite weak, and then, oh, okay. I kind of feel like, yeah, I kind of feel like a vehicle could probably get through there. It's a bit too rounded, but that's all right. We'll live with it. Shorten that. We just want a bit more of a slope. Fantastic. Okay, now that looks, yeah, a vehicle would have a rough time getting through there, but it could do it. Okay, we'll duplicate this guy now to make it look like a different rock that's not reusing the same geometry. Pardon me, we'll spin it right round, baby right round. We'll shrink them a little bit. What we'll do is I'll have mountain geometry on the other side of that as well to make it, let's see here, something like that. Spin it around again. And what we'll do is we'll have an invisible wall here that says, oh, I don't need to go back to town. And that way the player can't get back through there. But we'll have to make it to where if the player's here, their vision stops them from seeing too far downhill. So we may need to increase the size of these fellas a bit more. Okay, a little bit more different geometry. Okay. See how that doesn't look good when it's just slamming up against the rock there. Do I have a higher LOD for this fellow? Let me see here. What have I got in my asset? Oh, that's LOD 0. Let's see. Okay then. Okay, we're going to live with it. Now, again, I'm going to use a different texture. This is just a placeholder. And I will use a rock wall texture that matches these rocks more closely. You can see that blends a bit more now, doesn't it? Okay. Go back to this guy. Vehicles are supposed to be driving through here. I'm going to shrink my brush. Okay. can see my resolution's quite low on this, and that's just to make sure we don't put too much memory pressure on the Wii U hardware. The player will never be able to see back there. Okay. Now when you have other materials like this, that's when you want to wind down the opacity, and you can work a little bit slower, and you can start giving some dynamic to the textures, and that's what makes it feel like it's not just you're looking at, you know, a video game tiles and whatnot. That helps it feel like a real environment. But there we go. Again, it's a little bit tougher when you're at this low of a resolution, but if I go higher up on the resolution for these control textures, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the Wii U. And again, I'd really rather have, you know, highly detailed environments instead of a detailed splat map. So we'll live with that. Okay, and this is again, I'll do an example here. When I was mentioning that texture there, so I've broken up the visual line here, right? Now I have rock, so it's not just flat, but we want more of a visual breakup. So see how it's so flat? Right here, it just goes from the terrain to a rock wall. I'm going to put a tree right there, and you can see that's now added something interesting to look at. You can see there's harsh lines here, so I'll pay extra care, and I'll put a tree right there, so it's a bit harder to notice. Put a tree here to break up that visual line. Tree there. Now some trees here. This is really slopey for those trees, but that's just how it is. Now we do want to... Oh, okay. And the problem is you can see that the trees stop there, and if you go higher, farther back here, you can see that's where it stops. But in the engine, or the in-context lighting, the character's camera will always be blocked by trees, so you won't necessarily see the end of the map. We'll have geometry in the distance. But I just want to keep breaking this visual line here. Put one here. Make sure a car can still get through. Okay. Now in terms of detail, I think I have a stump here that I can use. I got to press F to find. Where's this guy? Oh, I don't want that one. You know what? I'll use this one. These are... Oh, what? Where am I? What? Where is this? Oh, I've got a second. Okay, that was very confusing. I've got a second terrain in here. Okay, cool. I'll use this stump right here. Where in Sam Hill have I gone? All right. Ooh, that's way out, isn't it? Ah. Drop down low. Let's bring him up. Pretty far. Okay. All right. Here we go. Now I like to use details like this. I look for where I have too many harsh straight lines. So say for example, it'll blend better when I have the right textures in there. But go ahead and put this guy there. That helps to break that up. I think that looks a bit better, doesn't it? Okay. And of course, that's what you have grass and bushes for as well, as you want to break up your visual line. So if the player's there, that helps it have some visual variety. Okay. Again, I'll put grasses and branches there. Okay. So yeah, I'll just have these hit here for now. And again, I can sort those out later. So say for example, I know that the car will be parked there. So see how this doesn't look quite right. Generally, underneath trees, grass doesn't necessarily grow in full there. So what I like to do is I like to place some of this dirt here. And that, it's a little bit tough when the resolution is so low, but that helps break the visual monotony of the grass, but also it's a more true to life that the roots would be extending out from the bottom of the tree and you'd be visible dirt. There we go, something like that. Let's turn on. Okay, let's go ahead and let me find my player rig. My player rig has gone somewhere, so I'll just go ahead and find that rig very quickly. I'll go to my hierarchy, I'll type in rig. Rig. Okay. I have my rig. Seems to be way over there. Let's go ahead and bring them. Bring the player rig over here. Go ahead and turn on the lighting here. Okay. Can I hide my gizmos? No. Player looks around. All right, so you can see what I'm saying. There's a line there that I don't really like, that I would like to break up. As you can see, it's pretty neat. It's visually pretty neat. I'll stack some bushes there when I've got them. Okay, cars will be parked there. Let's get our lighting back on. And now we'll break up the visual monotony of this rock wall. Back to our terrain, we will select trees. So this time let's put a couple of these guys here. Yep, put one there. We want to visually lead the player to this path. Let's see, where do I want them to go? It's been defined here. Oh, let's see. Yeah, they can walk up through here. So I'm going to plant these trees here to say these trees are sort of creating a fence line, and they're saying this is not the way to go. Okay, we'll use a couple different trees there. And I sort of pose the camera where I think the player would look. And if you have a straight shot, if the player can look somewhere in a straight shot and see a lack of detail, that's where I put a tree. So I'm not just haphazardly placing them and then wasting rendering overhead. I look for the empty spots and then I place something to where I can make good use of rendering overhead. There we go. And if the player moves to a certain spot and there's another bald spot, like there's a bald spot there, go ahead and put a tree there. And then I'll move them a little more like that. There we go. You want to get rid of the bald spots. All right. Okay, and I don't necessarily want the player to go here. I want to discourage them from that. So actually, one of these here. All right, I want this guy to be a bit taller. That guy to be taller. This guy here. So if these trees are sort of kind of dead looking, they should be a little bit taller, shouldn't they? There. Okay, so I want to visually push the player in that direction. So what I will do is, see that there, this here, and I want to sort of designate this little, oh actually no, I wanted to use this tree is what I wanted. Okay, that's too big. So again, this is an area that where it really matters where the placement is. Cool, my camera moved itself. So this is where I spend more time in terms of the visual design and the composition of the scene. I want this area, if the player wanders in here, I want it to feel like a sort of a small little, you know, a little secret cave they found sort of thing, you know. So I'm going to put some trees in there, break up the visuals a bit. There we go. So if they happen to walk around this back area, again, I sort of want to herd them in the right direction. To put some rocks here. All right, let's put some trees there. Put a happy little tree there. So now it kind of feels like the player's being pushed. So even if they go off track, the game is still trying to tell them where to go. And you can see, oh, you got a fun little area here. Now you can like hide a small item here so the player will feel like, hey, I explored and I found a cool little item. Or if they go down the more obvious path, they don't necessarily get anything extra. Okay, I want to make sure my scale is still right. Where's hold? Make sure these trees aren't way too big. Alrighty. Okay, yeah, that seems okay to me. Fantastic. Okay, and I expect to have the majority of all of this, all the tree placement, the rocks, the details, the twigs, branches, and stumps. I expect to have all of this done today. You generally need a lot more time to create an environment like this, but I've created a fair few environments um, for games in the past and other Silver Falls titles, and I am very much pressed for time uh, with White Inside Its Umbra development. So I have to do it quickly. So I'm pretty much just sprinting at this point. This is a non-stop sprint to get this all done. Okay. Wow. I'd like to have my air conditioner on, but it actually blows my lighting rig around a bit. It's quite powerful. Okay. So you can see here. So the purpose of having like a rock wall or whatever, it isn't necessarily just to make things visually interesting. That is a large part of it, but a big portion of having variety in your environment uh, is to guide the player and to help the player understand where they're supposed to go. Um, so I'll use this rock wall for example. So when you look up, you understand, okay, you're not supposed to be able to walk on that rock wall. You intrinsically, within a few seconds, understand, okay, I can walk here and I can walk here, but I can't walk on the rock wall. So that also visually guides the player and lets them understand where they are supposed to go. If you establish these rules, it makes the game feel like it makes sense, which is, it's being fair. You have to be fair to the player. And then it's totally jacked up if you break those rules. And suddenly there's an area where you have to walk on these rocks. How's the player supposed to know that if you've spent the whole game telling them that they can't walk, on that? So I'm just looking at my slopes and where I can put these rocks. And again, I like to have where it's a little bit more flat to have grass there to make it visually interesting as well. Otherwise, it'll look quite plain. So this will take a while to paint, but yeah, it's just part of the job. Uh, you do that, and the player can understand what the environment is. They can sort of relate to their environment. They understand it and it makes sense to them. Right, and again, so let's just try and do this in context now. Let's grab our rig and have a look. And I'm actually going to, let's see, we'll put that there. We'll put that there, put her there. So now this is what the player sees, okay? I'm going to grab the rig. Okay. You're going to move the rig. So what you're seeing on the top screen, that's what the player sees. Oop, okay, we're falling through the terrain. Okay, let's turn. Right, so we'll use, oop, okay. We'll use this scene as an example. That looks, to me, that looks horrible. That's awful. That's so plain. And so from a compositional standpoint, I don't need the camera to tell me what that scene's going to look like. After creating environments enough, I understand, without having the player camera, I understand from the game view how that's going to look. And so I know ahead of time I don't need to keep going back and forth. So I will take my uh, dirt texture I like to put underneath the trees. We'll go ahead and visually break that up. And I actually have root models, and I like to use root models beneath the trees as well. So sometimes I'll do that. I don't have a lot of time for that right now, so I may forego details like 3D root models coming up. I just don't have the time for it. Okay. Do I have any bushes or grass? Let me see what I have here. What have I got here? Let's see, prefab detail. Okay, so I'm going to my terrain. I'm going to see what, I don't have any grass details here, as you can see. So I'm going to edit. I'm going to add a detail mesh. I'll show you what I'm working on here. Okay, I have, let's see, I have detail meadow, dead grass. They've sort of fallen behind that window. There we go. Let's grab this one. I like to have a noisy spread that makes the grass more varied and interesting. Okay, render mode, grass, yes. Now then, let's have a look and see what this looks like. I'm going to place some here, okay? Not sure. I'm not sure I super like that. Okay, detail mesh. Let's add another one. Curses to you. Okay, another noisy spread. And what's going? Oh, hi there, Xavier Orion Games. How's it going? Yeah, thanks for stopping by. I'm sorry I'm not super paying attention to the chat. I'm sort of wrapped up in putting this environment together. So let's try this. Let's see what this grass looks like here. Okay. Oop, I still selected that first one. They look quite similar. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of this one. Let's see, clovers. Let's see. I do have to format these specifically because they've gone a bit funny. All right. Right. I actually wanted these. Let's try these leaves. I'm going to change that up a bit. Okay. Leaves. Yeah, there seems to be something wrong with those. They're not showing up well, so I may need to just come back to that. I need to find out where I've got my prefabs for grasses as well, because I have to format them a specific way to be optimized for the Wii U and to actually work in this version of Unity. So that's not working so great right now. Let's go ahead and get some smaller rocks and twigs in there. Branch. What sort of branches do we have? I have a specific system that I created that lets me use what I call soft physics. They can only collide with certain things in the environment, and they save a lot of rendering overhead. So for example, they'll only interact with the player's leg collider, so you can kick around branches and things like that. I have that in these Switch versions of the Silver Falls game engine, the game framework, but I won't be doing that on the Wii U, as I'm concerned about the physics processing overhead. We'll put a dead branch or tree trunk there, and then maybe a second one in the distance, just to break up the visual line. Oop. And we can sort of have a look at the scene is now getting a bit more interesting to look at. And again, when I've got my proper grasses in there as well, let me see what other branches have I got. Tri-bow. Okay, we've got this and we've got this. All right, let's drag this. Okay, now I've got a tool called I forgot what it was called, but it lets me. It's like a paintbrush tool that lets me just paint the objects onto the scene. So I'll be rigging that up in a little bit, but I don't have it set up just at the moment right here. So I don't want it to look organic. I mean, I want it to look organic. I don't want it to look like it's posed or forced to look a certain way. Okay, now let's see what sort of rocks we've got. Any sort of small rocks. Okay. What's this look like? Doesn't seem to like that rock. I'll see rock. Nope, doesn't like that one either. Let's put a rock here. That's one of our small rocks. There we go. Yeah, so you can see the scene now looks much more interesting and organic than it did before. And then when I get different kinds of grasses and leaves to go all over the ground, I'll grab the rig now. Let's go ahead and move them around. So you can see if there's areas where I know the player is definitely going to be traversing, I pay more attention to those details. We'll step at it from a distance. And look, it's a little bit more interesting. And I do need bushes, leaves, grasses, more rocks scattered everywhere. That's the idea anyways, to look at areas and if I know the players is going to be there, I spend a bit more time on that. Let's go ahead and remove that. Okay. Okay, well, that's all I've got time for today, so I've got some things to sort out, but that's the end of the stream, but I'll check in again soon and I'll share more progress, and then hopefully by the end of the day, I think the map should pretty much be done. Thanks for watching. I hope that was interesting for you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.